When your own child looks at you like a burden, something inside you breaks in silence. I told myself it was temporary, just a few months under her roof, until I got back on my feet. But that first night, when I placed my suitcase by her couch, I could already feel the distance. Chloe smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I wanted to tell her how proud I was, how beautiful her home was, but the words got stuck behind the feeling that I no longer belonged anywhere. The mornings came heavy. I woke before Chloe made coffee like old times, hoping she'd smell the comfort of it and remember. But she just grabbed her travel mug and keys. "Thanks, Mom," she said, already halfway out the door. There was no malice, just absence. Sometimes absence hurts worse. I spent the days cleaning things that were already clean. It gave me something to do, something that made me feel useful. But every spotless counter reminded me I was living inside someone else's order, not my own. Chloe came home late that night, heels clicking, perfume following her in like another person. "You didn't have to wait up," she said, glancing at me like I'd forgotten my place. I smiled anyway. "I just wanted to know you got home safe." The words felt small. She nodded, distracted. That night I lay awake again, listening to the city hum through her walls. I told myself this was love. That love was sacrifice, patience, silence. But a whisper inside me asked, "When does love stop meaning less of you?" The job hunt became my full-time heartbreak. Every click, every polite rejection chipped a little more of me away. Chloe tried to help. At first, "You just need to modernize your resume," she'd say. I nodded, pretending I didn't feel like a relic in her digital world. The distance wasn't loud yet, but it was growing, one quiet sigh at a time. It started small. "Don't use my things," she said when I borrowed her detergent. "Try not to stay up so late when I watch TV in the living room." Rules, boundaries. I didn't argue. I just tried to disappear inside. But disappearing doesn't always keep the peace. It only teaches people how easy it is to erase you. I met Ben for the first time that weekend, Chloe's fiancé. Kind eyes, easy smile, the sort of man who looked you in the face when you spoke. He shook my hand like he meant it. For a moment, I felt seen again. Dinner that night was polite on the surface, but fragile underneath. Chloe talked about promotions, vacations, plans. I laughed at the right times, nodded in the right places, but every word felt like a reminder that her life had moved forward, and mine had stalled somewhere behind her. Later that night, I heard them whispering in the kitchen. "She's not even trying," Chloe said. The words hit me like glass underfoot, sharp, quiet, impossible to ignore. Ben's voice was softer. "She's trying more than you see." I lay still, tears sliding into my pillow, and wondered when my daughter stopped seeing me at all. It happened over dinner. I'd spent the day cooking her favorite meal, chicken stew, just like when she was little. I thought it might bridge the silence between us. But when she came home, the first thing she said wasn't, "Thank you." It was, "Mom, I told you not to touch my kitchen." That was the moment something in me began to wither, quietly and permanently. The argument wasn't about stew. It was about space, about how small mine had become. "You're turning my home into your comfort zone," she said. "I just need some boundaries." Her voice was calm, professional, detached, like she was negotiating rent, not talking to her mother. I said, "I'd leave if I was making things hard." I meant it as peace, but she rolled her eyes and said, "You're being dramatic." That's when my voice cracked. I didn't shout. I just said, "I've done everything for you." She looked at me like she didn't understand what that meant. Then she said it. "You're pathetic, Mom." It came out cold, effortless, like it had been waiting at the back of her tongue for weeks. My breath left me. For a second, I thought I misheard, but then she looked right at me, steady, unflinching, and I realized she meant it. I didn't answer. I just walked to the couch, sat down, and folded my hands in my lap. The sound of her bedroom door closing was sharp, final. I looked at my suitcase in the corner, still half-packed from the day I moved it. For the first time in months, it looked like freedom. Sleep didn't come that night. I sat on the couch, staring at the quiet space where her words still lingered in the air. Pathetic. It echoed in my chest, steady as a heartbeat. I thought of every lunch I skipped so she could eat, every night I worked late so she could dream bigger. I didn't feel pathetic. I felt invisible. When morning came, I made coffee out of habit. The smell filled the apartment, like memory itself. Sweet, heavy, unwanted. I left her a note that just said, "Gone for a walk," but it wasn't a walk. I went to Mrs. Latham's. I needed someone to tell me I wasn't losing my mind. Mrs. Latham didn't say much. She never had to. She just listened, her wrinkled hands folded around her teacup, letting my words spill until they turned to tears. "You raised her," she finally said. "But that doesn't mean she gets to unraise you." Something about that broke me open in the best way. When I got back, Chloe was gone. Off to work, off to her world. The apartment felt colder than ever. I sat at her desk, staring at the rent documents, the lease she'd bragged about. And that's when it hit. I couldn't change her heart, but I could change what I allowed. Respect wasn't something I needed to beg for. I began to write. Not an apology, not a plea, an eviction notice, addressed to Chloe Rivera. No anger, no sarcasm, just facts. 30 days to vacate the emotional space she'd claimed as her own. It wasn't revenge. It was closure. For the first time in years, my hands didn't shake when I signed my name. I slipped the envelope into her mailbox before dawn. The air was sharp, the sky painted gray and silver. My heart wasn't racing, it was still. I'd spent years learning to endure, but that morning I learned to let go. I wasn't leaving with anger. I was leaving with peace she hadn't earned the right to break. When Chloe came home that evening, I was already gone. I left the couch neatly folded, my photo gone from the end table, my presence erased as quietly as I'd lived there. All that remained was the letter, and the silence waiting to meet her. She called me that night. I didn't answer. I listened as the voicemail played through, her voice breaking between anger and guilt. "Mom, what is this? Are you serious?" I turned off my phone and sat in the quiet, finally realizing peace doesn't always sound gentle. Sometimes it sounds like nothing at all. The next morning, I went for a walk through the park near my new place. The air felt lighter, the world less cruel. I bought a small coffee, sat on a bench, and realized I didn't need anyone's permission to start again. I was 52 years old and still becoming someone new. I mailed her a final note a week later. Just one sentence. Dignity isn't something you inherit. You learn it. I didn't know if she'd understand yet, but I hoped one day she would. Sometimes love doesn't mean stay. Sometimes it means teaching someone what it costs to lose you. Chloe found the letter 2 days later. I imagine her standing there, expecting fury or guilt, something to feed her defense. But instead, she found calm words. No accusations, just boundaries. I didn't need to hear her reaction to know it shook her. Sometimes silence echoes louder than rage ever could. Ben told me later she cried that night. The kind of crying that comes from somewhere old, somewhere she'd buried. She didn't know what to do, he said. I told him I didn't need her apology, just her understanding. He nodded, eyes heavy with the truth that sometimes the hardest lessons come from love that finally says enough. She texted me a few days later, "I'm sorry. I didn't realize what I became." I read it 3 times, feeling something shift inside me. Not forgiveness yet, but space for it. I wrote back, "Take your time. So will I." I started working again. part-time at a local bookstore. The smell of paper and ink felt like home, like turning pages I hadn't realized were still blank. Every customer, every quiet hour shelving stories, reminded me I hadn't finished mine. Some nights I still thought of her. How quickly love turns to resentment when gratitude goes missing. But I didn't ache anymore. I only hoped she'd learn that love isn't obedience, it's mutual grace. Maybe the lesson I gave her wasn't punishment but permission. To grow up, to see me, to finally see herself. 3 weeks passed before I saw her again. The city had begun to bloom with spring, the kind that smells like rain and second chances. I was shelving books when I felt someone behind me. I turned, and there she was, standing by the door, smaller than I remembered. Her eyes weren't defiant anymore. They were searching. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. It wasn't awkward. It was heavy, full of the words we'd both been carrying. She finally said, "Hi, Mom, just 2 syllables," trembling. I didn't rush to answer. I wanted to feel that word again, after all the silence that had buried it. When I finally said her name, it came out soft, like forgiveness testing its voice for the first time. She came closer, holding something behind her back, a folded letter creased from being read too many times. "I kept it," she said. "I wanted to hate it, but I couldn't." I nodded, unable to trust my voice. She took a deep breath, her chin trembling the way it used to when she was little, and tried not to cry. "I was cruel," she whispered. "You didn't deserve that." I could have told her she was right, but pain doesn't need confirmation. It needs grace. So I stepped forward and held her hand. The paper between us crinkled, but I didn't let go. "We were both lost," I said. "Now we get to find our way back." The tears came easy after that, and for the first time in months they felt clean. We walked afterward, down the same streets where I once felt invisible. The city didn't feel cold anymore. It felt alive, forgiving. She talked more softly now, her voice slower, deliberate. "I thought strength meant never needing anyone," she said. "But maybe it's letting yourself need them anyway." I smiled, because I had spent a lifetime learning that truth the hard way. She slipped her arm through mine like she used to when she was small, and the gesture said everything words couldn't. I didn't know what would happen next, whether she'd change or not, but I knew we were both starting from honesty, and sometimes that's all you need to begin again. Later she came to see my apartment. I worried she'd judge it, the smallness, the peeling paint, but she didn't. She walked through each room slowly, touching the framed photo of us on the nightstand, the thrift store mug drying by the sink. "It's cozy," she said softly. And that word, cozy, made my throat tighten. She offered to help hang new curtains, and as we stood on chairs together, laughing at how crooked they turned out, I realized something. I didn't need to be her caretaker anymore. I just needed to be her mother. Human. Imperfect, still learning. That night, when she left, she hugged me first. Her voice cracked against my shoulder. "Thank you for not giving up on me." Now I see her every Sunday. Sometimes she brings groceries, sometimes just her company. We don't talk about that night anymore. We don't have to. The lesson lives between us, quiet and permanent. I've learned that motherhood doesn't end when your child grows up. It shifts. It becomes less about giving everything, and more about giving wisely. Sometimes love is soft, sometimes it's steel, and sometimes it's an eviction notice written not in anger, but in hope. The kind that clears space for both hearts to start over. When she leaves, she always says, "See you soon, Mom." And this time it feels like a promise, not an apology.